Thank you for being here. The City of Fort Lauderdale will be hosting its meetings in a virtual format until further notice. The public can listen to and view the virtual meetings at fortlauderdale.gov/FLTV and also on Channel 78 and AT&T U-verse Channel 99. For those who want to speak on an agenda item and have not already signed up to do so, please visit fortlauderdale.gov/VC meetings to sign up. To help ensure that we have a decorum as our in-person meetings, we've asked that you please abide by the following guidelines. Please refrain from any behavior that is disruptive. While on the phone waiting for your opportunity to speak, please mute the meeting broadcast on FLTV. And once you've completed speaking, if you will be muted and may either hang up or exit the meeting or stay. Chair Romano?
Yes. Would you do first item on the agenda is a roll call, please?
Chair Romano?
Present.
Mr. Zeltman?
Present.
Mr. Partington?
Present.
Mr. Walters?
Here.
I do not see Mr. Ostrow.
No, Mr. Ostrow resigned. We should talk about that in a minute.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Angeli?
Here.
Mr. Marshall? I see him, but...
Michael, could you please unmute yourself? And here we go. He's connected.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Mr. Grabski?
Here.
Mr. Ladd?
Here.
And Mr. Marshall, do you have audio now?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. I'm just trying to switch my audio from my phone.
Perfect. Madam Chair, you do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Can I get an approval of the agenda? Everybody got the agenda? Can I get an approval of the agenda, please?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
You got that? All right. Everybody in favor of approving, anybody against approving the agenda, please speak now. Hearing no one, then that the agenda is approved. We also have to approve the minutes of the January 4th meeting. Can I get a motion to approve?
Move to approve, Madam Chair.
Second.
I have to read some corrections into the minute.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and now you have some corrections. I'll be with you.
On the last month's meeting, we had the actual budget expenditure report. We found afterwards that there was a scrivener's error in some of the groupings. If you recall, we talked about 31 million in I&I, but if you notice on the previous months, that was 14 million. And on the previous month before that, it was 14 million. What we found that there was actually another report that was sent, and unfortunately the incorrect report was forwarded. And so I wanted to read that into the minutes as well as provide you with the report, but we'll have the updated report for today's meeting as well.
Good. All right, Peter.
Yes, page 8, third paragraph. Mr. Partington observed that the City Commission had heard from the public suggesting the system is sufficient to handle greater capacity, but cannot accommodate greater flow through pipes that are compromised. It's just a bit confusing the way it's worded. So my suggestion would be something like the Commission has heard input from the public, suggesting, keep that in, from the public, suggesting that although the system has sufficient capacity removed to handle greater, but it cannot accommodate greater flow through the pipes. Because the way it's written makes it sound like it's okay from the public's perspective, to add more flow. I was trying to get at, they may agree that there's capacity, but because of the condition of the infrastructure, they're concerned.
Any objections to that correction to the minutes? Okay, any other comments on the minutes? Now, Roosevelt, you made a motion to accept the minutes. Will you accept them as corrected?
Yes, I will move to accept as corrected.
Okay, and Peter, you're seconding again?
Yes.
Okay, anybody opposed to accepting the minutes as corrected? Please speak now. Okay, hearing no objections, the minutes are approved as corrected. Item number 2, general discussion and comments by committee members. General comments and commission, okay. Yes, Peter.
So I read something somewhere, and I'm sorry I didn't keep a record of it, that the 200 million bond for the stormwater projects, which is has been awarded and there's projects started, but that the city was in the running or had applied for a federal grant that might take the place of some of this if successful. So does any of the staff know any more about that?
Hey, Peter, Omar here. I might be able to answer that. Actually,
Okay, go ahead.
the committee is coming tomorrow from Tallahassee to meet the team and to understand more about the project. So we're gonna take him around in the area where we wanna apply for that grant. So that's ongoing. But we were
This is Nancy Gassman. Yeah, Omar's
Yes.
referring to a Florida Department of Economic Development grant that we've applied for to support the Doors neighborhood stormwater. What Mr. Partington is referring to is an infrastructure loan program at the federal level that would be available for us to apply for a very low interest loan for the $200 million that we would need for the stormwater improvement program. That would supplant going out for a bond, and instead we would get a low interest loan from the federal government. The fact that it would be a half to a percentage point lower in terms of the interest rate would represent a significant savings. Plus it would allow us to avoid going out into the bond market to get the money.
So the city, the way you see it then, Dr. Gassman, is that the city would see that if this is successful as a replacement for going out to the market for this $200 million bond, correct?
That's correct. We would still be borrowing the money. It would just be a different methodology. We would borrow the money from the federal government as a low interest loan as opposed to going out for a municipal revenue bond.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Walters, yes.
question for the city staff. Will the same restrictions be applied to the loan as it would to the bond when it comes to use?
Not sure about that. Dr. Gassman, do you know anything about that? Because I'm not sure about the restrictions in regards to that.
I think that the guidelines would be different, Mr. Walters. And I don't have the details. We have simply applied for the loan program. We have not yet been approved. And so those are some of the details that will have to be worked out should we be successful in being approved for that loan. But I believe that the restrictions will be different than the
thank you
bond
for
program.
the explanation. I'm just concerned and want to make sure that when we get money for a purpose, let it be used for that purpose. And if we don't have those restrictions, then there is nothing to stop the $200 million from being used on other projects that was not intended. Am I concerned for
Understand your
nothing?
concern. I understand the concern you're raising.
Right,
Thank
and this is the first time I'm hearing about this, and my first thought, and Roosevelt expressed it correctly, is the bonds are specific for the specific projects, and you can't fool around with the bonds. So I think that we're not going to be able to go into depth on it today, because again, some of us are hearing this for the first time. Can we put that on the agenda for the next meeting? Alternative funding for the stormwater, for phase 2 of the stormwater stormwater management plan. Am I saying that right correctly, Nancy? Phase 2 of the
The stormwater master plan, that's correct. And
Okay.
again, the idea is that whether we go out for a bond or whether we go through this loan program, it is intended to support the implementation of the stormwater master plan.
I got you. So let's put that on the agenda and be very clear about that. Okay. Was there anything else, Peter?
No, thank you.
Okay. I would have had something under general discussion, but I think it would more appropriately fall under old business. So I'm going to defer some of my concerns until item number 4. Anybody else want to say anything about the general discussion? Oh, okay. All right. So let us then move on to, for a reason I don't really remember why we did this, we moved public comments from the end up to the to further in the front of the agenda. Do we have any public comments on this call?
We do have someone that signed up for item 4. However, I don't see their number on the list, so I don't think they've joined us as yet.
Okay, but they probably don't. They probably are still thinking we're doing it at the end of the meeting. So if that person shows up at the end of the meeting, we'll take them then.
We also have Paul Shettles that's signed up to speak on item 4. Was that the person you were referring to, Pauline?
Yes.
Okay.
Is he on the call?
No, he isn't.
All right. So let's get into item number 4, and perhaps he'll show up. And if he doesn't, we'll take his comment at the end. How's that?
Okay.
Right? Okay. Item number 4, old business. Old business is continued discussion on developing a moratorium. I asked the staff to put an actual quote from our mission statement as to what that particular charge was for us. And specifically, it was to evaluate and provide a recommendation on the feasibility and impact of implementing a moratorium on the acceptance for or issuance of a development permit within the city. Okay, so that is the actual language from the resolution. I understand Dwayne Spence is with us. Dwayne, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. The reason I put it there is because I want to keep our focus on fulfilling that part of our mission. And we talked about this last week about what form is our, not only what our recommendation will be, we're still formulating that, but what form this would take. And I would like to put on the table on the item number 4, old business, a document that I worked on this week, which was a proposed outline for an eventual report that the committee would make to the city commission. And I offer this not as a document that we're going to discuss today or that this is the way it has to be, but only to focus our thoughts on eventually we're going to have an end product here. We only had 18 months, first 6 months were COVID pause. And before you know it, our term will be up. And we have to sort of pull all of our thoughts together and present it in a way that is useful, a useful document for the commission and also for the general public, because the general public has an interest in what we've been doing. So if Pauline or Anisha, could you put that document up on the screen?
Okay, I'm doing so now. Also,
Thank you.
Mr. Chettle has joined the line.
Okay, well, he wanted item 4, so we'll get to item 4 with him after the members of the committee are finished. Okay, can we get to the top? All right, and again, this is not necessarily the way it's going to end up. This is only just to get the conversation started. And what I'm suggesting is that it be in the form of a report. And so when I started working this document, much like David Oshansky worked the first document when we did our first report to the commission, it changed significantly. So there's no pride in authorship here. This can all change. I just want to get us started. So the first thing, obviously, in any report is the executive summary and recommendations. And then I'm suggesting that we do very briefly on the background of the first ITF. Can you just pull that up a little bit? Keep going down a little bit. All right, so the first infrastructure task force, why we were originally started, what were the results of our first recommendations? And actually, when you see the 4 recommendations we made, we did, all of our recommendations were implemented in some fashion. And then we had an additional charge from the mayor himself asking us to review the P3 approach to the 5-ash water treatment plant. And we actually did make a recommendation about that. So that very briefly, that's just the history. Can we keep going up? All right, so now we have the new Infrastructure Task Force Advisory Committee. We only have an 18-month life, okay? And our job was to continue the first mission, but added the additional mission. And again, I quote the additional mission, which is evaluate and provide a recommendation. So then we had a COVID hiatus from March to August. And then I sort of started thinking about, well, what have we done since August, okay? We've been monitoring the progress on the consent order, bond products, pump stations, the I&I, the new truck line. We've been monitoring the progress on CIP projects, capital and enterprise funds. And every time you see a question mark, it means that I'm not sure that this is right. And I'm not sure that we have all this information. So this, as we go further, there's gonna be a lot of question marks, okay? The third thing that we've done is we've monitored progress on planning products, which are the asset management, come back down, there we go. The asset management plan and the COM plan, the Hazen and Sawyer force main conditions and risks analysis, which is, I like to refer to it now as the new Reese report. So we've been monitoring a lot of projects and a lot of planning work that's been going on. So I put that there as what have we been doing with our time? We've been meeting, what have we been doing? And also things have been happening in the city while we're meeting. It's not just us meeting, but the city has been making a lot of progress with money and focus on the issues. So for instance, and these again are just instances that came to my mind while I was sitting and writing. We just recently got a report on the fire hydrants and the valve maintenance program, which is a very hopeful, wonderful sort of thing that is the city is sort of grabbed by the horns and taken and run with it. The second thing that came to my mind was they've been mapping the water main and sewer line breaks. They've been giving us reports about where and how often these things have occurred. I understand that a water distribution system study is underway, similar to the sewer system study. We've been getting progress reports on the police station replacement. Not as good as I want, but we're getting them, and the city is working on that, and they're hiring people, and things are moving. The Parks Bond is being implemented as we speak. There are virtual public meetings going on for the new Park Bond projects that will be funded in this next round of funding. Phase 2 projects were added to the consent order. Hazen and Sawyer did all of their work, and they added some 6 projects, some additional projects to the consent order. There have been a number of amendments to the consent order based upon some sewer breaks. So additional work has been included in the consent order. Things are happening. There's a lot of things going on. I thought what we would do is we would make a sort of a list, sort of a discussion of all the things that have been happening, because a lot of things have been happening. This next one is something that we have not focused on, and that's roadways and sidewalks. Roadways and sidewalks, we've been so caught up in storm sewers and sewers and water that we never really got around to roads and sidewalks. But what's happened in that area is that with the surtax being enacted, the city actually has a plan for the next 5 years for projects that are going to be funded by the surtax. And the county also has a plan, including lots of projects in Fort Lauderdale. So we haven't actually taken a look at that, and we might want to take a look at that, because what that has done, that surtax money has freed up a lot of money that the city would have spent on roads and bridges that are now being funded via the surtax. I'll give you an example. There's a bridge project in Lauderdale, in Harbor Beach. I think it's called the Ocean View Bridge. It was one of the bridges over the intercoastal that served a residential community. It's a $17 million project, which was going to be funded out of the city's capital project budget. And now it's been shifted over into Surtax funding, freeing up $17 million for something else. What else, I don't know. And that's a whole question, but that's another discussion, okay? So, so this is what's been happening in the city while we've been meeting, and there's a lot of work's been going on. And now what I think we have to focus on is what we did, our additional mission. So the first thing we did was we explored the legal issues, right? Dwayne was with us, and we explored the legal issues. He gave us, the benefit of his perspective. And it turns out that, we need to do this by ordinance. And perhaps we want to do this as part of the current process, because there is a process now. And so then what we did, the next thing we did was we explored what is the current process. So we looked at all the capacity letter processes, the record keeping, the developer requirements. I mean, this is, a documentation of all the work that we have actually done. And if you keep going up, Pauline, the other thing that we are currently exploring is we are exploring the impact fee expenditures. And where did the money, how much was collected? Where did the money go? How is it reported? And trying to keep track and get our arms around that particular part of the program. We have not, we're sort of in the process of doing that now, and a lot more may need to be done, but I'm just trying to list all the things that we've been doing. And again, I took a shot at, and this may just be my bias, and I'm very happy to have my bias wiped clean from this. But I thought what we found so far is that capacity is not an issue. Distribution, we got a lot of distribution projects going on from the consent order and the CIP. So a lot of work is being done on the system itself. The condition is still a problem, obviously, from our last few meetings we just discussed with Hazen and Sawyer, that there are potentially pieces of the system that are at high risk of failure. Maybe we need more transparency in impact funds, and question, just to show that, this is just my own sort of stream of consciousness. Other people may fill in different question marks. And then I'm thinking that in the end, we have to make a recommendation on our additional mission, which we were told specifically to do. And then we have to make a recommendation about what's going to happen at the end of the 18 months. Are we going to give them a report and say it was a pleasure to be of service? We're done. Or are we going to be in a position to say, we just spent 18 months, here's our recommendations, and here's a series of things that we think need to be done either by an extension or another group. But at some point, we gotta wrap this up. We gotta put a bow on it, and we have to give it out into the public. So again, these are just my thoughts. I don't even think I want to spend too much time talking about it today, because we have so much on the agenda, unless anybody wants to just jump in and offer some discussion about it. But I would like us to at least use this as a sort of a stepping up off point for our next meeting on how we're going to get all of our information together and in what form we're going to be transmitting this information to the commission. And the last but not least would be an appendix, which would have everything in it. All of the reports, all of the maps, all of the everything that they give us as sort of the backup materials, okay? So that there would be in one place, in one document, hopefully all of the information, so that if a person 20 years from now looks back and says, well, what did the infrastructure task force do? They would go to this one source and they would see the whole picture of what we did, what we recommended, and what the end game was. So again, I only offer this as a sort of a starting point for us to start thinking about how we're going to wrap it up. And I'm happy to answer any questions. If you want to talk about it now, or you want to just take it home and think about it, and we'll talk about it at another time, whatever the group wants to do. I'm going to stop talking.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Roosevelt.
Let me just say thank you a lot, because you put a lot of work into this, and it's laid out well. When you was talking about the legal part of it, don't forget the discussion we had when we was trying to determine short-term versus temporary, and that our report should reflect not interchangeable words, but one word that will be throughout the report. And when referred, instead of long-term or temporary, it's be long-term, 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 all the way through the report. I think that's where we should go. And but we need to develop that language too, so that we can apply it to different projects as we move along.
I'm taking notes, Walter. Thank you. Roosevelt, thank you very much. I'm taking notes. Anybody else? Peter.
So if the people that were on the old ITF will remember, and Chair, you had it in there. What went to the commission last time was quite short, which to my mind was advantageous because it did concentrate their mind on the big picture. So my input is I would like to shorten, and I know you were just trying to get at the universe of things that we've discussed and looked at. To me, the big picture items, we have been specifically asked to address the question of a moratorium or similar. And the second issue is funding and overall finances. And personally, I still feel like I don't have a handle on, I understand how much money has been spent, how much is to be spent, but I'm having a hard time relating that to the progress on the Hayes and Sawyer current work, if you like, current plan. And that's an important issue because we told the commission, I think, previously that the plan, or they believe the plan is overall for 1.2 billion. And I'm not sure that that's the correct figure. So to me, the moratorium and the progress against the projected funding plan are the two big issues for me.
I got it. Okay, Charlie had his hand up and then Ralph. Charlie,
yes. The one area that I would love to get a little more concrete information on is the major projects, where we are in terms of progress and expected completion date. Because I especially that trunk line, and I know staff, it's a moving target, and there are many, many, many tasks that are going on right now. But in terms of juxtaposing moratorium versus fixing the system, where are we? You know, in a short, 5 things. Where are we with the big trunk line? When's it supposed to be complete? Those biggies that could really affect our system going forward. I would love to get shorter, simpler, concrete answers on where we are.
Got it. Okay, some of that may be answered, Charlie, in the presentation that's coming up.
Okay, great.
Yeah, okay. Ralph.
Thanks, Marilyn. Excellent job. As you may recall, in our first year or first 6 months back in 2017, we went through the same process. And what I had done back then was make an outline of all the objectives that the Infrastructure Task Force Advisory Committee was supposed to do based on the description of the resolution, whatever it was, 9242 or something. And so each areas that we're supposed to have covered was in an outline form. And then subsequent to that, I made a sort of a bar chart, if you want to call it a Gantt chart, where we showed the progress of the various projects. And this is going back. So you may want to incorporate something like that to help better organize and better define the various projects and infrastructures that we addressed accordingly.
I'll go back and find that, Ralph. And if you have it, would you shoot it out to me so I don't have to go look for it?
I will try to resurrect that
that
rascal. That was 48 or 40 months ago.
I know. And then your computer breaks between now and then and everything gets lost. Okay, well, thank you. If I can't find, I'm sure the staff can find it. I'm sure. Their computers don't break. So again, just to start the discussion, I don't want to get, overly into it now. Let's just get the brain cells working so that we all decide as a collective group what it is we want to do. Peter, you want to finish this up?
Yes, I agree with what you're saying on your outline, but I wanted to point out to the group that we do have the benefit, I think, of Dwayne here, and I think specifically on the question of the moratorium. So I'm conscious that the city attorney's time is valuable, and I'm wondering if we can, if anybody has questions about the concept of a moratorium, or I have slightly more detailed questions, whether we could go in that direction for 10 minutes.
Well, I hear what you're saying, and I think that it's a good idea now to circle back to that question now that we've gotten a little further. Could I suggest that unless Dwayne wants to jump right in here, it might be better to have him come back next meeting, given how, this is sort of playing out. But it's up to Dwayne. Dwayne, you want to join us on this?
Well, I'm not certain if I can add anything more to what has already been said in our previous discussion about a moratorium. So I'm kind of curious as to what the outstanding questions may be, and maybe it would warrant me coming back at a later date. But I am a bit curious as to what the outstanding issues are.
Peter?
So I can throw a couple of questions out. The first question would be, I would like the city attorney's input on whether you can base an adequacy finding for the basis of concurrency on a condition analysis that has a subjective element to it. We've heard that the Hazen Sawyer, Patricia Carney's analysis of the state of some of our infrastructure has a subjective element. So with that said, could an evaluation of the adequacy include a discussion of condition where there's inevitably, because you can't go and dig everything up and look at it, an element of subjectivity? That would be question one. And then I had another question.
Wait, that's a big question. Can we get an answer to that question?
So I'm not familiar with what element is subjective. That would raise questions of due process and equal protection with regards to treating all developments equally. The standard should be objective when it comes to whether or not the system has adequate capacity for the proposed development. So if I can dig a little deeper as to what is meant by subjective, I mean, besides the fact of, in other words, the adequacy, you have a set number that is used to generate the amount of impact that a development will have on the system, whether it's by trips or what other mechanism. Those are objective standards that you plug in the numbers from the proposed development and you come out with a impact number of that development. Is that what you're talking about in terms of subjectivity, or is it something else?
So what Hazen Sawyer showed us was an analysis of the state of our infrastructure based on various factors, finishing up with a categorization into high risk infrastructure, medium risk, and low risk. But some of the factors that go into that analysis were at least partly subjective. So you have, and I asked the question of Patricia, if you have a development that's putting 1,000 gallons onto what you have assessed as high-risk infrastructure, can you say that there's a high likelihood of failure of that infrastructure? And she's not able to affirmatively say that.
Well, that would be your issue.
Can I make a suggestion? I see where Peter's going with this, and I think it's a very important question. When he says subjective, I don't think that it's really subjective. The way we think of the thing subjective is as somebody is making a personal determination. The Hazen and Sawyer work, which I would ask you, Dwayne, to take a look at, ranks risk on the basis of a number of factors. You know, age of the pipe, the material of the pipe, the salinity of the soil that the pipe is in. But the subjective part of it is that they didn't actually run a camera through the pipe and see the actual physical condition of the pipe. They use these parameters or criteria as sort of surrogates for making determination that the pipe was at a high risk of failure, okay? So it's not so much subjective as it is substituting an actual physical invasion of the pipe, you know, a physical looking at the pipe or dig it up and see what condition it's in. They use these criteria as a sort of a surrogate for what is likely the risk of that pipe being breaking. If it's old, if it's in the wrong material, if the water table is very high, you could pretty much as an engineer say that this is a high risk situation, but you can't say definitively that I have observed in this pipe that it's going to break.
Marilyn,
that's the issue.
Marilyn,
I think I
yes,
understood that.
wait. So, Jerry, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, the word that I use for it and that I've been trained to use for it, and everybody that does decision and risk analysis, it's conditional.
Okay.
The age of the pipe, that section of pipe has other breaks in it. It's unknown, can't be determined unless you go do reconnaissance work, but it's conditional. But it's way more than a gut feel, that's for sure.
So Dwayne, it's not subjective, it's conditional. Okay, so substitute conditional for subjective, and does that change your view?
I don't see how they could be interchangeable. I think if I'm understanding your description, what's giving me pause is that you don't have any expert testimony or even something of an affidavit which I can go by based on what Mr. Partington said, is that the preparers of the report can't say, they won't put, you know, I'm assuming based on what's said that there's no one that's going to put their names on the dotted line, so I can put a document up in court saying we denied the permit because this engineer said that this.
I'm hearing you. My question to Anisha and the other staff is the report that Hazen provided us, which we paid a tremendous amount of money for, and is done by one of the leading engineering firms hired by the city to tell us what is the condition, as far as they can tell, of the pipes and the risk associated with those pipes breaking. That's a great document, wouldn't you say? I mean, they've signed on the dotted line on that, haven't they, Anisha?
Mm-hmm.
They actually have signed off on that document, and there were different categories in there. So there was one category, and Omar, help me out if I'm missing something. But there were 3 different categories, and I believe they actually only used 2 of the categories. Where one category is based on those different things that you just mentioned, in analyzing age and type and so forth. And then there was the second part where they actually did have to have a company come out and actually go into the field and run some piece of equipment over that area to get some additional information.
But they didn't go into the pipe.
They did not dig. They did not dig into the ground and bring up any of the pipes. No.
Okay. I think Dwayne, we would ask you to take a look at that document.
So this goes beyond the scope of the moratorium, but it creates another scheme with regards to amending the ULDR and the review for adequacy. So
that's a possibility.
This document could be a basis for that type of review on which Public Works can, make their comments more than just on capacity as the code currently is set up, to look at these other things. This would be an interesting new path. I'm not aware of any other municipality that has theirs structured this way. But as a general moratorium, you've kind of gone beyond that question when you're talking about subjective different areas. If you're doing a moratorium on the issuance of development permits, you're doing something that isn't on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, I got you. Ralph.
Yes, Broward County, who I was with back in the 80s and 90s and early part of the 2000s, I was in charge of the neighborhood improvement projects where we would go in and replace all of the old utility lines, sewer, water, drainage, even roads and everything else. And one of the criteria we use, it's more of a guesstimate, if you will, based on the, and Dwayne was hitting on that. He was saying it's based on really the material of the pipe, the age, whether the pipe had inside lining or not, a number of factors that you could make a guesstimate, if you will, on the service life of that particular type of pipe. We had different types of pipe, and certainly what would add even more substantiation would be if some of those pipes had been the same material pipe put in at the same general time failed and they had to be replaced, where you could observe the internal portion of that pipe to substantiate the fact that, okay, this one was in the ground for 50, 60 years. Look at the condition. These other pipes were put in 50, 60 years ago, same material, same condition. And so you can draw a stronger argument, if you will, to say that these are more susceptible of being replaced in the next 5, 10, 15 years, as opposed to a pipe that had been put in with lining and had a longer service life projected for it. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Well, this is a very fascinating conversation so far. Hand up, Peter.
So my next and final issue for the city attorney to possibly comment on is Dwayne can see how we're kind of grappling with the possibility of a slightly amended adequacy system. Would it be possible to base a moratorium on a definite time frame, say 4 to 6 months, during which development is halted while intensive analysis is given to a revised adequacy finding system for developments going forward? So a definite timeline, and the rationale for the moratorium would be we need the time to grapple with some of the issues that we've just been talking about.
So that timeline for the moratorium would be for amending the ordinance, coming up with an ordinance change in order to address the issue?
Yes, but initially it would be time for the city staff to work, possibly in conjunction with the relevant consultant, on recommending changes to the system that we currently operate for evaluating adequacy to explicitly include condition. Because at the moment we don't have a set, and as somebody indicated, you indicated, that would be a different approach to pretty much anybody else familiar with operating. But that doesn't mean, you know, we have to remember that going back whenever it was, Fort Lauderdale became a poster child for failing infrastructure, countrywide and even worldwide, I've heard it. So that's why I'm belaboring this, because people are very concerned about putting more load onto our aging infrastructure.
So yes, conceptually, yes, that can be done. But I would like to see, in order to, because this is going to be a pretty major step, and we do anticipate challenges from the development community, whether it be at the commission or in court.
We're not taking that step. We're talking about that step. We're not taking that step.
No, I'm saying you're speaking about that as a recommendation. So what I would like to see is the concept with regards to how that adequacy review, the direction for amending it to be a little bit more developed. But yes, in concept, a moratorium could accompany such a process.
All right. Okay. Does anybody else have anything they want to talk about under the issue of moving forward on our specific additional mission at this time? I'm sure we'll talk about it all the time, but at this moment. And if not, I would like to bring in the member from the general public who wanted to speak on this issue, since it's the only one and there's no reason to keep him here all day long. Is Paul with us?
He is, city moderator. His last four digits is 1754.
Paul, if you could please press *6 to unmute.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Chair, again for all your time and everybody on the task force. And I'm sorry to see Mr. Ostrow go, but I wish you all the best. I would like to push back on one of the things that you just put down in writing, just as an idea.
Sure.
So it's nothing personal. But regarding the capacity problem, we have both a wastewater capacity problem. We also have a condition problem. And we've obviously seen countless reports identifying in specific detail that we have both. And one of them that you just mentioned, Chair, is the CMOM, which you're right, it cost $900,000 to the taxpayer. And this was one of the reports that was from June of last year, so it's the most current that we have, and it was signed off by City Manager and Director of Public Works to the state in order to comply with the consent order. So let me just give you a quick couple of examples just to show you. So, for example, they ran a simulation of June 2017 rainfall of 6 inches. And they identified 20 out of 177 pump stations that had that did not meet the groundwater criteria, and they had 15 that didn't meet the ground elevation criteria. And then, for example, I&I, they had an enormous number of sewer basins that did not meet that. And if you go to the page 51, you'll see it jumps off the page. I mean, pretty much everywhere in the downtown rack and where the new development is taking place west. A21, A7, A11, A18, A29 to the north, A22 to the north, they jump off the page as not meeting basic capacity. And then, of course, you've got pump station conditions. So you've got 7 that are very highly likely to fail. You've got 31 that they identify as needing immediate replacement. They've got 22 that are over 50 years old. And there are 44 that have a very high likelihood of failure. They obviously looked at the consequence of failure as well, that you pointed out, 50 feet proximity to a body of water, or worse, proximity to a well field. So there's 16 that meet that criteria. And then you've got obviously the force main assessment, where you've got 18 force mains over 50 years old. You've got 10 that have had 2 or more breaks in the last 5 years, and 75 that are in severely corrosive condition. So the bottom line is this, that capacity and condition go hand in hand. So if you have capacity, but you don't have the condition, or the condition fails, or vice versa, then you're in deep trouble. And that's why your efforts and considerations to add condition to the water and sewer capacity letter through DRC and P&Z is so vital. And this gets you to what Mr. Ladd is talking about, which is, where are we? And if we are on a trajectory and a path where we can address the significant issues in a timely fashion, then that mutes the moratorium discussion. But then you come down to timing, you come down to whether or not we have the internal expertise, whether or not within the scope of work of the consultants that we have hired right now, is this within their scope of work? How long is it going to take us to fix all these things? And so again, I just want to interject that capacity is tied to condition. And I want to drive that point home as a consideration for you. And I appreciate your time and thank you for the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for following us and giving us your input, Paul. Thank you again. All right.
I tried to.
Is there anybody else who is signed up to speak on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, hearing no one, again, this is an ongoing discussion. Peter, you want to say anything more about this?
How do you envision we make progress on your outline? Are you going to circulate that?
It is now a public document, having been presented at this meeting. We can all get copies of it, and if you want to mock it up, rearrange it, do anything you want to it. We'll be talking about this at every meeting until we come to some resolution, because at some point the commission's going to turn to me and say, Marilyn, where's my recommendation? You know, and I'm going to say, we're working on it. But at some point we're going to have to give them our recommendation. So let's get ahead of it rather than have them ask us for it. And I'm envisioning that eventually we're going to schedule a workshop with the commission. And even if we give them just this piece of it, all right, you know, we don't do the whole thing, let's say, as I envisioned it as a big package. If we only pull this piece of it out and have a workshop with them about this piece, maybe that's the way we go. There are multiple ways to do this. And what I'm just trying to do is I'm just trying to get us to get thinking about at some point, how are we going to do it? So I think that, you know, I would appreciate it if everybody go home and think about this. I offered this document just as a thinking thing to get everybody thinking about how we're going to go forward with this. And we'll talk about it again next month, I'm sure. Jackie, you just you just turned on your video. Does that mean you want to say something?
No, I just got home. I
okay.
had business I had to finish, but I'll say
Excellent.
that I think you did a good job on what you've done so far, Marilyn.
Thank you.
Moving forward, I look forward to talking a lot about the sidewalks. I don't think we were supposed to talk about bridges and other things that obviously mean a lot to our city and our community.
I would point out to people who are not aware of it, at the first ITF committee, when we went out to the general public and we held a series of workshops around the whole, every district in the city, roads and sidewalks was the #1 issue. It wasn't sewers, it wasn't water pipes, it was roads and sidewalks. So I think in the next agenda, we should have that as a separate item, so we can focus on it as much as we focus on, sewers and water.
I saw that the city were allocating funds or had a bond issue or something coming forward to repair sidewalks. I don't know how that process happened. I don't know how people got included, so I think it's important that we look at that whole situation, because sidewalks and streets are a big deal to everybody.
Okay, very good. That'll be on the next agenda as a separate item. All right, Ralph, you had your hand up, yes.
Yes, Jackie may not be aware, but back in, I guess, 2015, 16, and including 2017, sidewalks did become an issue, and the city has put sidewalks in 3 different categories based on their condition. Something like 3 deviation, separation like 3 inches and greater, something like cracked sidewalks all the way down there. But the city does have a program in force where they have gone out and have corrected, I guess, millions of dollars worth in taking care of the most egregious broken sidewalks where it could be a tripping or liability condition. And then you go down to very minimal stuff where you have like 1 inch or less deviation between the sidewalks. that are a lesser priority. So they do have a program, but it would be good to revisit that, look at it to see where they are, and because they spent millions of dollars on repairing the sidewalks.
Okay,
Let me just say one thing about that, Ralph. The reason I'm very interested and sensitive to this is just personally, I came home one day to my swale being totally torn up, landscape pulled out, my sidewalk pulled out. I knew nothing about it. The program is handled, or was handled back then, it was probably around the time you're talking about, very poorly. They would choose to do 10 feet, then they'd leave a cracked one and do another one. There was no communication to homeowners, and all those things I think we can help get straightened out, as well as continue to repair additional sidewalks.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds, you know, we were fortunate in Imperial Point having a good project manager, and of course the contractor has a lot to do with that. But yeah, those are the type of issues that it'd be good for the city to put into the equation, so to avoid going out fixing a sidewalk, but yet damaging private property and or the right-of-way portion. So good point.
Good point. Okay. All right. So I don't want to everybody feel like I'm giving you the bum's rush, but we really have to be out of here and we have a lot more to do. So I'm going to move on to the second part of item number 4, which is impact fee allocation report. Anisha?
Yes. Before I start with the impact fee report, I would like for Pauline to provide the update on Mr. Ostrad's
please,
the recognition that went out from the mayor.
Yes, so the mayor signed off and the clerk signed off on a letter thanking Norman for his service. And that letter went out on January 4th. So I believe that he should have received it by now. I will double confirm that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pauline. I appreciate that. And do we have any indication on who is going to replace him? He's a mayoral appointment. He was a mayoral appointment.
Yeah, we don't have that as yet. We do still have another seat as well open. So there are 2 seats.
2 seats are open.
Yes. One for, I believe, District 3.
Okay.
Because when we restarted this committee, District 3 didn't pick a second slot, a second seat.
Okay.
So that's still open. It's still vacant.
Oh, all right. Okay. I'll make a phone call. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your efforts on that on behalf of Norman. I appreciate that. All right, let's move on.
And just to add, I asked Pauline to get a copy of the letter so that you could have had it for your records, but unfortunately we couldn't get a copy of it. So unfortunately we don't have that for you, but we did want to try to get that for you for your records as well.
I would appreciate that. Yes.
So moving on to the impact fee allocation report. So based on our last meeting, you guys asked some questions about the impact fees, which we call capital expansion here in the city. And you wanted to know, how are we accounting for that and how those dollars are actually coming in and what projects are going out for those projects. And so we did some digging to try to see if we can do a good reconciliation and just to make sure you understand that what we are doing definitely is within the guidelines of the Florida statute, which ensures that all of the projects that we are doing within the city is reasonably connected to the impact fee or has a rational nexus as it pertains to the impact fee for capital facilities or an expansion of the system. So what we've done is we provided you with this document here that shows the revenue that has come in for the last 2 years. And so in 2019, we 4.6 million was generated for impact fees. I'm sorry, for capital expansion impact fees. And in 2020, 3.5 million. Now you don't see the corresponding projects for those years because it's not a one-to-one ratio, one-to-one. But what you will have, or what we do have, is over $10 million worth of projects that took place over the last year in 2019, and over $9 million worth of projects that took place in 2020. These are projects that took place out of Fund 454, out of our water and sewer fee, which is our enterprise fund. And so these projects are utilizing enterprise funds as well as those impact fees for projects that are eligible. Projects such as like the Victoria Park, some of our water main improvements, the basins that we've done some rehabilitation on. And also you look at our huge relining that we're doing in the main redundant line project that we have, because that redundant line, while it's actually doing some renovations to the current one, but it's going to increase capacity once we have that new line there. So there are a long list of projects that we have, but we do not have it where that project that is done and it is associated back to the impact fee. There is the impact fees that are going into and is coming into the system. And you can see here on the screen that you'll see 452, and you'll see the revenues. And so you see in 2019, all of the dollars were coming into one pot. And then in 2020, we've segregated so we can see how much of it is water and how much of it is sewer. But in 19, it was all coming as water and sewer impact fees. But now we're segregating it where you can see how much of it is water and how much of it is sewer.
Okay, so that's very good that actually you're going forward, you're going to segregate them out so you can see where they're coming from.
We have, as you can see, this is from FAMOUS. This is our financial system that you're looking at a copy from right out of the system.
Okay, so let me see if I understand this correctly. In 2019, we collected $4.6 million in impact fees.
Yes.
In 2019, we spent a lot more than $4.6 million on various projects, but some of those various projects received some of this money, but we do not know. But we cannot say how it got from the impact fee pot into the project pot.
Right, because it's not actually broken out where that project says, okay, we say, well, it has this much of the dollars. For example, in Victoria Park, there is 15,294. Well, let me pick a chart, a larger one. Northwest 2nd Ave tank restoration, $1.8 million that came out of the Fund 454. But of that, how much of that is impact fee dollars versus how much of it is enterprise dollars? So that segregation is not there. However, I can tell you definitively that there is more than enough dollars that are going out of the system, out of the enterprise fund that are accounted for. And again, there is no one-to-one. So even if those dollars come in 2019, it is not to state that those dollars will be spent in 2019. So it's not a one-to-one in that regard either.
Okay, so what it is the money comes in and it goes into 454. And there are a lot of dollars in 454. In addition to the impact fee dollars. Is that true? Is that
No, what I'm saying is, if you can see here, this is impact fee. You see on the very bottom of the screen, it says impact fee sewer. Yeah. So it is a separate account for impact fee. But when we are appropriating the cost for the project, that project is not being appropriated where it's saying, okay, this $2 million project, a portion of it is going to this revenue stream. I mean, if this fund, and we're going to spend this much from this fund. We know this is how much we've got generated, and there are several projects that are eligible, but those projects are not. We're not tying that money one-to-one.
So the only tie is that there's a list of eligible projects.
There is a huge list of projects, and there's a list of projects that were spent in 2019, over $10 million worth of projects that were funded out of our enterprise fund, which is our 454 fund for water and sewer, that came out of our dollars. And so since these dollars are within that, they're apportioned out of that as well.
Boy, that's some bookkeeping job.
Well, again, which is why you'll see in 2020, we've broken that out. So you can see the revenues broken out where you'll know how much of the impact fee is water versus how much is sewer, because we wanted to keep a better count of how that money is coming in. And one of the things that we talked about internally as well as with our budget office is if we should be actually doing something different going forward so that we can have a truer account of how the dollars are being spent.
I would just bring to your attention that there's a lot of action up in Tallahassee about impact fees in this session. And they're actually moving in the direction of making it required that the cities or whoever collects the impact fees has a direct relationship to projects. And that it's not this fungible amount of money that somehow manages to make its way into the appropriate projects. So just pointing out, you might want to take a look at that because that may have an impact on you going forward.
Well, I'm looking for
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Pauline for Anisha on this? Anyone? Okay, so this was the information we asked for them last time. We asked for last week. This is the information that they've provided to us. I think there's still an open, to me anyway. This is very, very useful information. I now know how much money is coming in. But I'm getting, if I'm understanding Anisha correctly, there is no way to track specifically where the money goes other than assuring us that they're going into statutorily appropriate projects. Is that a good way to express it, Anisha?
That's a good way. I mean, we know that there are only the projects that are reasonably connected to it or have some kind of nexus are projects that are being used for impact fees. I mean, and again, I understand what you're saying. You're looking for a one-to-one, saying this is the expense for this project, and just like you can see Fund 54, you want to see a fund for impact fees, and you're saying you don't see that that direct connection with that. But what I'm sharing with you is, although there may not be that one-to-one direct connection, there is several projects. There is over $10 million worth of projects in 2019 that went out the door that was spent. Those are actual dollars spent that were eligible projects for impact fees. So there is a whole lot of work that's being done that fall into this category of projects that will actually have an expansion to our system.
Okay, well, from my perspective, it's not so much that I want a one-to-one relationship. But I always get this query from people in general. Yeah, where did the impact fees dollars go? Because people don't get involved in these, budget lines and that kind of stuff. They want to see a direct relationship, and I think the legislators in Tallahassee are getting pressure from their constituents to force the city to be more, not our city necessarily, but all the cities who collect impact fees to be more, not upfront. It's not a question of being upfront, but to see a more direct relationship. I think the development community is interested in this too. I mean, they pay a lot of these dollars, and what am I getting for these dollars? Maybe they don't care as long as they get their permits. I don't know. That's a Charlie question, but if I was a developer and I was putting the dollars in, I'd want to make sure that I was getting some value for my money. So again,
Chairman, we can provide you with the list of the projects, but just because dollars come in 1 year doesn't necessarily mean those dollars are going to get spent within that same year.
I appreciate that, but you just said something that I think might be very helpful. Could you provide a list of projects that in some way, in some part, used impact funds? That would be very helpful, because then you could see, look, these are very important projects. And a portion of that important project was used impact fees. So it makes a nice connection there. And Peter had his hand up.
We'll send that after the meeting because I do have that document, ma'am.
Thank you. Peter, you had your hand up. And so Michael Walsh after Peter. Marshall. Peter first. Peter, unmute yourself, please.
So Anisha, you know how on most commission agendas, they have a budget amendment item where they're moving money from one budget to other, or one, whatever you call it, within the city. Wouldn't it be possible to sort of piggyback on that and have this capital expansion money in one fund? And then when you have a project that needs to be funded and you're taking money from the capital expansion, the impact fee pot, you do a budget amendment, so you've got that direct record?
I understand exactly what you're talking about, because actually where I came from, we used to actually do it a little different. And so I'm familiar with what you're referring to, but we do not have it laid out in that particular way. Those are some things that we can talk about going forward as to how we can reflect it. But currently, we do have it, like I said, broken out on the revenue stream, but on the expenditure side, it's not broken out like that. But we can definitely continue to work on trying to figure out, to identify a better way so it's complete full transparency as to exactly which projects are being utilized for impact fees.
Okay, Michael, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Anisha, real quick, the slide you had up earlier, it showed like 4 million some and change in impact fees. Those were fees collected either this year or last year?
Those were fees collected in 2019, and then those were the fees collected in 2020. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I understand that you may hold on to some fees and then they're not spent that year, they're collected. But I agree with the chair that maybe a list of the projects that were funded through impact fees, but maybe also, do you have a list of who paid those impact fees?
I don't have that list. I can try to work with DSD to get that, because the impact fees are not collected through Public Works.
Why would that matter?
Okay. Good, but you have a record of who paid the fees. I'm sure they pay them whenever they pull a building permit, right?
Yes, but those are not collected through Public Works. They're collected through DSD.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Anisha on this particular information item? If not, we will go on to item number 5, new business. Okay. Before we get into that, I just want to say something about the materials that were provided from my own perspective. The maps are fantastic. The charts are great, and they're very explanatory. Again, every time you get into one of these little spreadsheets with the numbers, it gets kind of crazy because they're very small and it's very difficult and brain twisting to follow them. But I think I can say that, they provided us with the information that we requested. And so, Anisha, do you want to start with the I&I water and sewer bond expenditure summary?
Yes, you see here. And so what you see here is the $200 million plus the $4.5 million in the interest for that $200 million bond. What I've had staff to do here is add to the very bottom some of the dollars that are actually being modified when we have a budget amendment. So, similar to what Peter mentioned, sometimes through the year, there's a budget amendment and there may be a project that we had to transfer funds from one to the other. And so that $200 million is still 204, but one bucket to another bucket may have changed. And so you always know how that bucket changed. I had them to add to the bottom here, any of those things, so you can see its things move. So just so you know what those notes are referencing. So only thing this is showing you as of January the 20th, it's 51% that has been spent to date. And actually, because last month's report was a little bit off, I really can't tell you how much of a change, but what I can tell you is a lot of work has been done. And a lot of projects have been spent, being shown that we've been spending a lot of money and a lot of invoices have been going out. Even during the pandemic, there's been a lot of work happening. With the bucket, you wanted to look at the 4.435. On another sheet, what we're going to show is the I&I projects that Chairman Mono that you asked about. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but this is just a summary of those expenditures showing the actual spent to date as of January the 20th and the encumbrances and the balances. What you have on the next couple of sheets, I think only one slide, is showing the status of those projects. It's small, but I think you can open it up a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so you'll see when that project's, if it's in construction or if it's in design, or if it's actually in the bidding stage. And then there's the percentages.
Okay.
And this is just because I know you guys are asking about the status, and then to the very left of the category, you see the project title. And so that's just a little bit more information. So that front summary is just that snapshot, but then this is just giving you more detail on those bond consent order projects.
Cool. I noticed something when I was looking at the numbers. If Pauline could go back to the summary.
Mm-hmm.
Summary, okay. The summary comes out to $204 million.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the total on one of the other charts, it was $255 million. It was a difference.
On what
Peter?
other chart?
You're not seeing that. I think it was like at the bottom of one of the charts. I was wondering if there's a difference between, and if the difference represented the number of.
You're talking about a different spreadsheet.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm not good with
And
spreadsheets.
Chair, I was going to bring this up as well because between the two spreadsheets, there's 205 expenditure bond funded on one, and there's 255, which I take to be all enterprise funds. So if you like, whatever time period this is capturing, there's 460 million of expenditure. Is that correct? Or it's capturing what has been spent and what will be spent towards 460 of expenditure coming from bond and enterprise fund. Is that correct, Anisha?
That's not 100% correct. The first sheet is 205 million. That's all bond funded dollars. But the question was asked last meeting to ask about the status of the consent order projects.
Right.
And so the second sheet is just strictly the consent order projects. And those consent order projects actually are bond as well as water and sewer funds.
That's what I was getting at, Peter. That's what I was asking for a clarification because we had to kick in order to complete the bond, the projects that were identified by the consent order. The 204 million was not enough. We had to kick in extra money. Is that a fair representation?
That is fair. That is correct.
And I was just wondering if that represents the overages on some of the projects and the underages on some of the projects and the delta and the new projects that were added in phase 2.
I'm not understanding your question.
There were a number of projects, capital projects that were required by the consent order. And
That's
then there was a
correct.
phase 2 of the consent order, which added an additional number of projects, some more pump stations and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that they were not accounted for in the original bond. Does this difference in the money represent those additional projects? Or just is it just the original projects that ran over by that amount of money?
I don't believe that's the case, but let me get the answer to that before we end this meeting for you, because I don't believe that to be the answer.
All right.
But I want to be definitive in my answer that I provide you. Yes,
Thank
Peter?
you.
So, Anisha, on the after the spreadsheet on the consent order projects, then you break that down into all the various individual named projects. So
Correct.
This is a question. You do not find those projects listed on that last 2 pages of spreadsheet on the first water and sewer project listing, that they are additional, or are they in common with the first spreadsheet of individual projects, and you've just pulled them out?
There should be some commonality, but Kim, are you on the line? Let me get our budget manager on to answer that question. Just to make sure.
Let me restate my summary then. So
I understand your question.
The summary is that there's 200+ million of bond funded projects ongoing. Those contain some to many consent order projects. In addition, there's another 40-odd million of enterprise funded projects. All or some are consent order projects. Is that a fair summary?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, that is a fair summary. But
Okay.
again, I want to get back to Chairman Mano's question that she's asked, just to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Okay, well, while we're waiting for Kim, does anybody else have any questions on this information? It speaks directly to our question that we asked last month was, how much more money, how much have we spent, how much is left to spend, and when are we going to have to go for another $200 million? Yes, Peter.
So it explains one question that I was having, and I always look specifically for the two big force main projects, the big ones, the north and the south. And they are listed on the first list with allocations of 24 million and 35 million, so 60 million. And then I thought, but that doesn't equal the amount of the contracts that I know were awarded on those projects. And then when I look down to the last spreadsheets, I believe they're listed again with additional funds coming from the enterprise fund. So those big force mains are pulling money from the bond fund and the enterprise fund. Is that correct, Anisha?
I'm so sorry, Peter, I had Kim call me. And so I was trying to listen to both and could not do both well.
Okay. So I'm always interested in the big projects, and everybody, me included, is interested in the progress on and the cost of those big force main projects. When I look at those force main projects, north and south, in the first, the funding allocated, encumbered, etc., totaled about 65 million for both the 60 million for both the north and the south, which I didn't equated to what I was aware of the value of the contracts that were awarded. Then when I looked at the second set of spreadsheets, I think they're listed again with some more funding. So my summary was that those force main projects, the big ones, are pulling from both the bond fund and the enterprise fund. Is that correct?
That is a correct statement.
Okay.
That is the correct statement, yeah.
Hey, Peter, Omar here. Are you looking at this spreadsheet right here where it says the force main is 108 million? Is that, and then, 60 million is the north and the.
Looking at the one with all the water and sewer bond 495 and central region bond 496 projects, and I hate to do this, but P12566.496 and the subsequent one. It's the big redundant force mains north length and south length. So they're allocated.
But Peter, that goes back to the point that I was making earlier, and I wanted Kim to come on to verify. So you have that if using the redundant project as an example. So you see the redundant project it's here in the bond list, and you see it here only for a smaller amount of the 35 million. You see it there?
Yes, I guess so. Yes. Yeah.
Hey, Pauline, can you put the page that Peter is talking about, because I'm looking at this other one here.
And then you should also see the redundant line on the consent order projects as well.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's why I made the statement earlier is that this year is just focusing in on the bond, the 200 million, but there are some projects that could be very well in both. But it's just based on what dollars are being associated with them. So to improve the spreadsheet, what I need to do on the consent order one, add the funding source here, so it'll make it a little easier when you'll know that project was included on the consent order, but then there's also other funding dollars associated with it.
That would be excellent. Even just put an asterisk on those projects that are multi-funded.
Yeah, I just do the funding source.
Right. Because, and going through this somewhat painful exercise, the point of doing that is to get a grip on when are we going to go for the next 200 million? And what is going to be in the next 200 million? And I want to make one observation, which I think Ralph would be interested in, in that under the consent order, we are just about finished with spending money on I&I. And
Yeah.
we've done 75% of the I&I has been spent. There's encumbrances for a whole chunk more, and there's only $500,000 left of work to do on I&I, and we're in 2021. So
there is an encumbrance. And remember, the encumbrance.
I'm adding the encumbrances in. Okay, so it's going to take us a little while to finish all the encumbrances, I'm sure.
Right. Yes.
So let's just say we finish the encumbered ones in the next year or two. Okay, just for the sake of the argument. Will we run out of the consent order money in terms of the I&I program, and then the I&I program becomes an entire enterprise fund program? I see Omar is shaking his head there. And that's a good thing because we don't want to stop doing I&I because we run out of consent dollars. We want to keep doing I&I.
Well, you'll know, and you look at the budget amendment for the next commission meeting, we've actually have a project where we are doing a budget amendment for some I&I projects as well. So we're constantly looking at prioritizing some I&I projects and moving money so that we can continue to do that work.
Okay, I think
another thing that I wanted to mention on the lines of the bond, although it shows that we're at 51% expenditure, we actually needed to be at 85%. And so we're actually identified some projects that we need to look at, so that the eligible projects that we could have utilized bond funds for, and we may not have used bond funds for, so that we can definitely should be at the percentages.
Hello?
I'm sorry, I heard someone talking.
Yes, ma'am. Trade them out. Trade out the expenditures for the bond spend down.
So we'll be at 85%.
What's the 85% come from? Is that in the consent order?
There was in the bond, I believe in the bond covenant or something, that we had to be at 85% at a 3-year mark, so that we can be at that spend down at that point in time. And so we're just a little short because there are projects that we funded out of cash that were eligible for bond funds. And so we're making those necessary adjustments.
In terms of paying yourself back? In terms of paying your, or just accelerating the projects, or paying yourself back for the money? Accelerating the project.
Yeah, so what I'm telling you is, when you see the next report for February or March, it will look very different. You'll be like, well, how did you get from 51% to 85% in 1 month? Well, that's how we got to 51% to 85%, because there were eligible projects that we used cash for that we could have used bond dollars for.
And that will be clear in the report?
Yeah, we'll make a notation to it as well.
Please make that clear. Okay, so this is the continuing saga of where the money is going and how much money has been spent and how much more money needs to be spent. Actually, the how much more money needs to be spent is still not clear. I mean, because we don't know what the out years are and what projects are going to fill out the out years. We've been working in this 5-year window between the consent order and the 5 years of the consent order.
Now, the out years will be a part of our CIP program, and so we're working on our budget right now, looking at the out years.
So if you were to compare, what was the date that the consent order started? 2017?
Is that correct, Omar?
It was September 2017.
Okay, so from September 2017 to 5 years later, we had to spend all the bond money, right? Is that correct? We had to accomplish all the projects in the bond, in the consent order within that 5-year period. But in that 5-year period, we also had CIPs, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the additional money keeps coming in from the CIP.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the 5 years from the bonds, the CIP going beyond that, that's where the new projects are, the unfunded projects, the ones we have to finish or start. So there's got to be a way. I'm trying to figure out a way to visualize, maybe in a timeline, how much money was spent in 2017 from the bonds versus the SIP. 2018, the bonds and the SIP. 20 or 22, which is 5 years, then it's all SIP or else it's another bond.
You said bonds and what else? What were you saying?
CIP.
Oh, okay, bonds in the CIP.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that. That's in a published document that shows what our CIP, and you see the 5 years, current year and out, and those 5 years out.
Yeah, but you don't see the differentiation between the bond funds and the enterprise funds. It's all together. It's all mush. You do?
No, it's not. It's separated.
Okay, I got to go look at that and take a look at that. And which document is that?
This is in the CIP. Kim, what's the fund number for the bond?
Yes, ma'am. The fund number for the bond is 495 and 496. Right. And it's identified in the adopted community investment plan. Those plans are online under the annual budgets.
Okay, so now when I go look at the SIP, I have to look and find 495 and 496. And those are bond funds.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and so when the SIP gets out past the 5 years of the bond fund, I won't see any 495s and 496s.
You won't see any 495 and 496 past 2023.
Thank you. That's what I need to focus on. Thank you. I'll go look at that. I appreciate that.
That's correct, right? Or do we show the future bonds that we anticipate forecasting?
We do.
Okay, so we do have the forecast for the additional tranche in there. Okay, so then I stand corrected. The 200 million for the 2023 tranche is anticipated already in there under 495 and 496.
Okay, can we take a look at that next time? Can we take a look at that CIP and this particular issue in particular?
Okay, I can send you that page.
No, I'm going to go look at it myself. Okay. But I'm saying for the committee,
it's available online.
Good, and send us the link so we can go take a look at it. But
okay, sure.
We're trying to now focus on. See, you guys know all this, right? And you know you got the numbers and the budget lines, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sure you're all very, very focused on trying to make this work. But other people have to understand it as well. And you don't understand it in a spreadsheet as much as you understand it in some more graphic ways. And I'm just trying to find a better way for people who are not into spreadsheets and budget numbers to understand. We borrowed this amount of money. We use it for these projects. We're finishing up those projects, even if we had to kick in a little more money to get them done. But now in 2023, we need more money. And here's where that money is going to go. Okay, that's what I'm trying to describe. Peter.
I hear you, Chair Romano, but I'm just telling you that's already identified in our plan.
Good. I'm glad it's identified, but we got to get that information out and not in a spreadsheet. How many people go online and look at the spreadsheet for the CIP is what I'm saying.
Okay.
You're doing good work. You got to get that information out. Peter.
So Anisha, the big picture from my perspective is you have the Hazen-Sawyer report, which is effectively the update of the CUSMP, the RIS report. That is the demand, if you like, for new capital projects coming. And you have the supply of money, which is from bonds, etc., CIP. And that is, particularly for bonds, is predicated on the change to the water sewer fees. They were anticipating, I can't remember now, maybe the chair will remember, whether it was 5 $200 million bond tranches, but that is the projected supply of money coming through various bonds at different times. And what I'm really interested in is, does that Hazen-Sawyer report and the way the expenditures are going change the demand for money ultimately going forward? Because we don't want to get a couple of years or at a certain point and say, oh, now we need another $200 million bond beyond what was projected, because the fees that are being collected won't support that. That makes sense.
I think it's bond anxiety, Peter, is what you're describing. I think we just need to focus a little more on the information that's already in the documents.
Yeah, I agree.
And understand it better, and maybe get it in a form that is more layperson friendly. And,
Yes.
and then we can go forward.
All right, I'll take the CIP data and see how I can present that. But the purpose of this document, from I understood it, you wanted to know the status of these projects and how much was actually spent. The CIP document is not going to provide you with that, but it will provide you with a planning of how much money we anticipate to spend for these projects this year and the future years out within the next 5 years.
I think you hit it right on the head. We're talking about two different things here. This is great information. This is exactly what we asked you for. Where do we spend the money on? Where are we going? When are we going to be finished with this? So this piece was really very, very helpful. And so I think now we can move forward, keeping the thing going to the maps and the other pieces of information that were part of this memorandum. Okay, here we go. Oh, these were the phase 1 and 2?
Projects that you asked about in your list, you specifically asked about the I&I projects that have been completed.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so we took this right out of the consent order report to show you the status of those projects.
And these are the I&I projects that are described in the previous summary, right? This was the money that was spent. So this is where the further breakdown of the I&I.
That is correct.
Okay. So they're all complete? Every I&I project that was in the consent order is complete?
No, these are the projects that are completed.
Oh, okay.
I believe there are still projects going on right now, but these are the ones that completed. You asked me about the ones that have been completed.
Thank you. And then eventually this list will get longer and will be all of the consent order I&Is that will be 100% complete.
No, Meryl, these are the 6 I&I projects in the consent order, and they're all completed. There were 6.
But Omar, there are other I&I projects that we're doing that are not consent order related.
That is correct. Those are projects, but they are not part of the consent order, yes.
Okay, so that if I were to tie this back to the summary sheet where it said we spent so much money on I&I projects and we still had more money to spend and there was still leftover money, that doesn't comport with this. So there's got to be a different number of projects.
Okay, so what's happening is that in the consent order, there is a certain area for each basin that has to be completed. It's not 100% of the basin. So what's happening is that there is still a small percentage of some of these basins that are not part of the consent order that need to be done. That's the money that you saw there that is left.
Okay, so we're using consent order money for projects that were not necessarily identified. No, that couldn't be. No, we couldn't do that.
The money that we're using to finish some of these basins is not consent order money. It's a CIP money.
Omar, I think we're confusing two things. If I could try to clear this up. What Chair Mamano is looking at is on the sheet where we say consent order projects, and we show 24.4 million, 24.4 for consent order projects, and we show that we've spent 18 million, and we show that there is almost $5.5 million left in the encumbrance and a balance of $530,000. And so she's saying if there are 6 projects that were consent order projects and you're saying there's 100% completion, then where is this leftover money going? Based on what I understand, based on what you and I talked about on Friday, you said the I&I projects are completed, but there is other work that is tied to that I&I project.
Okay, so the way it was written in the consent order, we had 6 I&I projects, 6 different basins. Not 100% of the basin was part of the consent order, okay? Because some section of that basin, we didn't know what the shape of the basin was until we did CCTV, okay? So let's assume that 90% of all 6 basins were consent order. The rest, which we're finalizing right now, it was left over on those basins. That was not part of the consent order. So we still got some work left on these basins, but it's not part of the consent order.
So the simpler answer, for instance, on Victoria Park is the portion that was identified to be done has been finished, but you expanded the scope and you guys probably have a couple weeks left in Victoria Park.
Correct. That's an example.
Oh, that's good.
And there's additional dollars associated with that.
Right. But
By the way, just with all this
Was that
minutiae, this is Charlie.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Charlie, for that clarification.
I'm recovering from COVID, so I'm like half awake with all these numbers. But I just want you guys to know on the staff that what you've done in Victoria Park is spectacular. You've done a great job. And I think this main line, if we get to a later exhibit here that shows how much progress has been made, you're doing a great job. And I don't think we're positive enough sometimes as to what staff is accomplishing in trying to catch up with our system.
True that. Okay, can we get to the next piece of information then?
Yes, and that would be Omar on the redundant line project. No, is it?
Yeah.
Nobody told me.
That's not what shows on the slide, but if you don't mind, it's the next page on the presentation.
Okay, can you come down?
Actually,
Pauline?
Hello. The next
Yes.
thing is the Public Works update, the water and sewer breaks.
Right, but I'm saying since on my page, I see the redundant sewer main project, and since Omar was speaking, it would have been good for him to just go ahead and get that part done.
I think that's the part that a lot of us are interested in. So could we do that one? Even if it's out of order, but it appears not to be out of order?
Yes.
There it is. It's
All
there.
right.
Yeah.
Can we make that a little smaller so we can look at the whole page? It'll be, okay, that's a little too small, but.
Next one up.
So
Okay.
if you look at the green line, the lime green line is what's being completed today. So this report is from January 22nd of this year, and we're about 78% complete while this report was issued. Right now, we're about 80% complete. The end of the contract is mid-July. Since we started in January, it was an 18-month contract. We hope that we can have this finalized before June, even before June, but things can happen, so we're going at a faster pace. We do own the record in the world of the longest run of HDD pipe for a 54-inch pipe. So we had like 3,300 feet that we went through underground, and that was a huge task, but it was done. So if you look at the lime green pipe line, that's what's being completed today. If you look at the little red dots, that's open cut, and on those areas there, we're gonna be adjoining the pipes together while they come from the HDD process and making connections. So that's the main disturbance that takes place while installing this pipe, as we have to make open hole and connect these huge pipes. So if you look at the dark green, can you come down a little bit just to? Yeah, if you look at the dark green, that's what's under construction right now. So if you look at the whole pipe from the south, where it says DMSI South, almost everything is completed. The only section that we have is the dark green section that is supposed to be pulled. Actually, it was pulled last week. Probably today, the status of the line is it has been completely pulled, and we're just waiting for the open cut connections there. So that's one part of it, and the one up from on the North Murphy side, from Sunrise up, that is the last run that we have, and that's what we're gonna do it in sometime in March. So if you also look at this diagram, you can see when we're gonna be doing the payment on most of this area. So that's well specified here, and we're gonna start doing some payment in the next 4 weeks or so. There has been some restoration already that taken place, but most of the final leaf is going to be done starting in 4 weeks or so. So again, we have pools. We have completed over 78%. We're going at a very fast rate. And I think we have minimal complaints from residents considering the size of the project. I'm constantly talking to residents every day, explaining why a piece of equipment is in front of their house, why is this happening, and they've been very understanding. And so far, everything's so good, so can't complain. So if you have any questions on this, please shoot.
As Charlie said, this was an amazing project done in record time. I know the southern portion was done by amazing contractors, the Mancini guys. Charlie, this is beautiful. This is what you need to see, right?
I'm very impressed, and it's basically our spine. Our spine has been replaced.
Yeah, and you know, Maryland, you live in Rio Vista, or you're in that area, right? So
No, I'm Harbordale, darling.
Okay, but you see what we did.
It's not Rio Vista, it's Harbordale.
Okay.
Better than Rio Vista.
All right, so we're working on the parks there. That's another section of this project. We are restoring the parks. That should be done mid-April. And again, we're working there very hard to get that done.
Good. Okay, Peter, you have your hand up.
Yes, Omar. So the north length heads off west at northeast 21st Street and then across Federal, etc. The existing force main continues south, I know, into a pump station in George English Park. So when the flow is changed over to the new force main, is the existing alignment, everything going to be relined, etc., to make that the redundant line?
That is the plan. We're planning to line that other pipe, and that's part of the. It's a big project. I don't think funds have been set aside for that yet, as we don't know the cost. But yeah, that is the plan. As you mentioned, Peter, as this goes live, we have a large portion of this pipe already that is live, that we already connected, and the flows are going through to GTL. From the Rio Vista section down, all that is the pipe is operating right now, the new pipe. So we have probably about 25% of this pipe already used.
Which length was the record pull, just for my interest?
I think it was like 3,300 feet, and it's a 54-inch pipe.
And where was that?
If you look here on the south part, let's see. Can you go down a little bit on the page? I believe it was this one where it has the 2,500 feet plus 2,200 feet. Actually, it was 3,700 feet. That's the section right there.
So it was
Rio Vista.
Rio Vista.
Mm-hmm.
The whole section right there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, can it be said, Omar, that every other force main in the city feeds into this trunk line?
Yes, there's some that have to be rerouted in order to connect to it. But that's part of the plan while we're doing this project.
Okay.
Okay.
But and everything from the beach doesn't tie into this. Doesn't the beach come down and come in across 17th Street?
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah.
Okay, so the beach is not affected by this project?
No, it's not.
Okay. All right, Ralph, you had a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Omar, can you tell me why the section along Bayview Drive, just south of Oakland Park Boulevard, is been, I guess, over 6 months where the Bayview Drive is blocked off there for like been 6 months. Is there a special connection or what's going on there? Just out of curiosity.
Has it been 6 months? I don't think it's been that long.
Yeah, because I've got I have a dentist that's down there, and he's right alongside there, and it's been over 6 months between my teeth cleanings, and it's been there, and they're kind of scratching their head why. And I said, you know, I don't know. They've been super fast on other areas, but I will check on that. And you know, he kind of got my interest on why it was. Maybe it was a point of connection, but it's been blocked off for over 6 months.
It is a point of connection, and one of the reasons why it's been there a while is because we had a lot of debris coming from some of these pump stations when they were doing some of this, and it delayed some of the pull of the pipe. I don't have all the details. I was just talking to that contractor about it today. In a similar, not exactly the area that you're talking about, but kind of south of that, because we had a lot of questions why equipment sitting here for so long and nothing is happening, and that was part of the problem. And sometimes when we decide to run a segment of pipe and there is not enough crews to do that segment, and we think that we need to do another segment because it's an easier way to finish it before we start the new segment. So things have changed back and forth. So that's why sometimes some of the equipment is left on site, even though, you know, there is nothing going on, but they're there for to be mobilized to other parts of the road later on. But if you can give me the specific address that you're talking about.
Okay, it's just like I said, it's just south of Oakland Park Boulevard. There's a dentist's office there. It's one block street, and it's right there. It's the first street as you go down south of Oakland on Bayview Drive. Okay. It's the next street there. It's and there's like a dentist's office there. I'm concerned because if I get a cavity, I don't want him to start drilling on me and thinking that I'm delaying it on purpose here.
I'll find out exactly about that.
Omar, you're a good man.
Omar, it's between Northeast 30th Street and Northeast 30th Place, and unfortunately, I've been on the wrong end of the MOT and the detour. It's been coming down my street for all 6 months, so it's definitely, as Ralph said, it's been 6 months at least. And one thing, I'm glad to hear that Murphy has been good in other places, but the MOT has been non-existent. And it's causing some dangerous situations. So that's one thing that should be scrutinized a little bit more moving forward.
Okay.
There's no flagmen where they need it, and the signs are knocked down half the time, but it's just something to check on moving forward. I'm happy to see that they're scheduled to complete this week and open up next week.
Did I see Nancy Gassman with her hand up? Nancy? Nancy? Was that a hello, Nancy, or you wanted to say something? Okay. Nancy, are you hearing me?
I think she's having trouble. Okay, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
There we go. I'm sorry. I just want to make the point that the city made the decision to use this pulling technology in order to run these lines throughout the city, in order to absolutely minimize the number of locations that were impacted with open cuts. But for every location that you're going to pull pipe, you still have to have a beginning and an end to where that pipe is being pulled. And while that has created inconvenience and maybe more than inconvenience for certain locations over certain time periods, just want to remind everybody that if we had had to do this as an open cut, there would have been the entire length of streets cut open the entire time, and that would have created a much bigger traffic challenge for the city. And so, yes, there's been a number of locations that have created inconvenience and extended inconvenience at certain locations. But the alternative to have done this by open cut would have really created a madhouse throughout the city. So I just want to remind everybody that yes, we couldn't do it without cutting open some streets, but we did it without cutting open all the streets.
And I think the neighbors have been pretty good sports about it. You get a lot of griping, yada yada, and the MOT plans were terrible. But I think everybody has understood the necessity for this, and so. The level of griping I found in my neighborhood anyway, Harbordale, that the level of griping was not significant. It was stressful, but it was a not significant griping. Yeah. So thank you very much for this presentation, Omar.
Okay, and, yeah, I just want to point out, like Nancy said, I mean, over 95% of this pipe is horizontal directional drilling, you know, so that's huge. And, you know, when you have that one downside that you have huge equipment making a lot of noise, as you will have open cut. So you got pros and cons.
Yeah. So let me just ask you one final question on this. You said that this is our new spine. This will be the new collector. But the old collector will not be able to serve as a bypass for emergencies, et cetera, until we reline it. Right. And you said that we have not yet estimated what it would cost to reline it, and we certainly have not put aside the money to reline it. So if I was to go to the 5-year SIP, I wouldn't see any money for this relining project, would I?
Correct. It's going to be on the next bond. It's supposed to be on the next bond.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And, you know, that could take up a significant chunk of the next bond, couldn't it?
Right. Yeah.
All right. So, again, big numbers coming up. All right, can we continue down the line of the presentations that were in the backup material?
Yes, Chairman Romano, I think the next thing we have is the water and sewer breaks report with the mapping that we provided. And so you'll see now this year, you'll see a full year, January to December for the water main breaks, as well as January to December for the sewer breaks. We did not provide January because with the meeting being on February the 1st, we have to have the documentation prepared before the end of the month. So we weren't able to provide it. However, we do have the information for January if you would like that information.
Okay, so this represents a whole year.
This represents an entire year.
Perfect, let's take a look.
Showing 87 breaks, of which majority of them are 6 inches, 6-inch lines. And you can see in the report on the map, not this one, but this one here just basically is a chart that just shows you month to month and how many for each one. I think the real report that has the best information is that map. I really like it came out.
Anisha, this is Rick.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to point out one thing because we get asked all the time, do we have more breaks when the weather is cold? And if you look at the breaks by month right there, you'll see that they started going down in December. November, October, September were the 3 highest months. And for us this year, especially, they were not necessarily cold months. They were fairly warm. So I don't think the cold weather really influences the number of breaks that we have. In fact, you spoke about January. In January this year, we only had 2 water main breaks.
Do you think some of the water main breaks are associated with the work that was being done in Victoria Park with all the redo of the system? I know I saw a few breaks that occurred by 4th Street, and also the high water with the extreme high tides we had in the fall.
Yeah, we think, you could be right. We think that there's probably more correlation between the tidal events. We did see quite a few breaks along the Cordova area when they were doing the seawall project.
Go to the map, Pauline, so we can kind of get a visual. And you can see that concentration of those breaks.
Wow.
Wow. Now, Rick, the question is, those areas where we have the concentrations of the breaks, do we have an assessment yet of what the condition those water mains are in? How old they are? Can we find some correlation to the condition or size of the pipes in those areas to the breaks, or is it so simply random?
It's not necessarily. Yeah, it's not necessarily random. As Anisha mentioned, a lot of the breaks were 6-inch water mains. Since AWWA now recommends a minimum pipe size of 8 inches, we went back and looked at the data, we'd probably realized that most of those breaks were on old cast iron pipes. And also when you look at the map, you'll see that a lot of them are in areas that have tidal influence. They're near canals and on the barrier island and those kind of areas.
So if we were to do a risk analysis on the water line system, the same way they do a risk assessment on the sewer lines, would we come to a similar conclusion that certain pipes are at higher risk of being, are at a higher risk of being broken?
Oh, most likely, most likely. And the one thing we've got to do, and we're doing this now, we're trying to make sure that the data is clean. Yeah. In our work order system, when we respond to a water main break, we don't always clean up or classify the break correctly sometimes. What we may classify as a water main break, Max, would be a service line, could be a valve, could be an ARV. So we have to make sure that in our work orders that we classify breaks correctly so that we really have good, clean data. And we're trying to do that now, from this point forward, we're going through and we're not counting, obviously, damage caused by contractors, water valves that may have broken and started leaking. We try to concentrate just on the pipes so that we know that we have clean data.
So if I was to look on the beach and I see a string of breaks in what looks like a straight line on the beach, in the purple and the pink area, is that pipe scheduled? Is that pipe scheduled to be replaced?
Yes, it is. We have the Breakers project coming up, which is going to do the Breakers Avenue, but we've also submitted a CIP to do the surrounding area. This is the North Central Alliance section of the beach, and we need to do all of those mains in there because they're all old, they're all cast iron, and they're undersized for the development that's coming in.
Yes, Ralph.
Yes, you hit on it. You notice that the waterways in there, and there's old cast iron, like Rick had said, and it's saltwater intrusion. Plus, you have tidal influences going up and down, and certainly it's not only the old tuberculation inside falling apart; it's also the deterioration externally on the pipe, and so that's why it's probably they're all starting to fail with the years that they've been in there in this particular area with saltwater intrusion.
Well, and in terms of where we are in the process, Victoria Park now has pretty much completely been replaced, as I understand it. How about Beverly Heights and Coley-Hammock? Is that where, because I see a real concentration right down there in that area. About half of it would be Victoria Park, I guess, and about half of it would be south of Broward.
Well, Victoria Park had two projects that should have pretty much completed almost everything in there. And some of these breaks were actually caused by the work that was being done in those areas on the older mains. So that's
right. I saw some of those.
That's again the data we're trying to clean up. But Coley-Hammock, we'll have to look at that and do a close study and see, because I don't believe I have a CIP for that neighborhood at this point.
But Rick, if I was going to play community advocate for a moment, and I don't even live in that area where I see all those breaks along the breakers, I would say to you, why would we allow any new development in that area when the system is so stressed already, and it's going to take 3, 4, 5 years to fund and build a replacement for that line? Playing Devon's advocate, okay? What would you say to them?
Well, the most recent development that we had in that area actually did replace the water main in front of their property. And that's one of the requirements we're doing right now. If anybody does have a project that's coming online, or they're in the design phase, we're asking them to make those improvements in order for them to be able to get their CO without any issues.
Yeah, but they just took care of their own water main.
That's right.
And they didn't take care of the pipe that's serving everybody else.
That's correct.
So again, just playing devil's advocate, why would I approve any project until that CIP project comes online. Okay, you're not going to answer that question.
I'm not going to answer you.
I'm
but
not going to put you on.
It would be risky for sure.
Okay, Peter. Peter?
You're on mute.
So, Rick and Chair, so on that point, it looks like you should reach out for some of that capital expansion fee money for water expansion.
Get her fixed.
No, really, that's a perfect place to use the, because you've approved, city has approved, we have approved a number of projects on the beach that have probably paid impact fees. And, you know, it would be really nice if you saw those impact fees go to replace that pipe. Just saying. Okay. So I think with the water, we have a similar situation that we have with the sewer, in that it's the condition and how quickly we can get those pipes fixed before we put some additional pressure on them. Again, just putting that on the table for thinking about.
Chairman
Yes.
Mono, I just wanted to point reference as individuals are looking at this sheet to bring to the attention on the bottom, the legend. It does have information that shows the date of the break. It also shows the address of the break, and it shows the size of the break, if it is a 6-inch, 2-inch, or whatever the case may be. While the colors of the dot does not reference the size, so some of these breaks that are shown in the map may very well be a 2-inch line or a 6-inch line or something much larger, but just to point that out.
Yeah,
and then you have also in the total up in the bottom, the box on the legend to the top left, it shows the total breaks of the 87 total, and then of course the colors of the district. So just as you guys get used to seeing this sheet, which again, I want to thank you guys for bringing this to our attention to prepare this, because this is a very helpful document, and I love this spreadsheet. I love this map because it tells you all. So thank you.
Where the problems are.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you, Rick. This is really good information, and we'll keep focusing on this, I'm sure. Okay. And then there was another map behind this.
Yeah, the next one is sewer, and the sewer map shows that there were 12 events within a year, of which half of those events resulted in SSOs, sanitary sewer overflows. And you can see there's some months where there's nothing, and then there's some months where we have major activity. And again, this one shows that there are various sizes of those particular of the pipe.
So again, it's not related to the time of year at all.
Doesn't appear to be.
Doesn't appear to be. So it's not related to whether there are tourists here or no tourists here. But then again, in this year, we had no tourists, so that's hard to say.
That is true. That is
true.
Yeah, and so you can see here where those breaks have taken place, those 12 breaks. It's kind of a little spread out, but.
And if we were to correlate this map, if we were to overlay on this map, the sewer lines that are characterized as high risk by the Hazen report,
Yeah.
Would we see a correlation? I don't know.
I'm not sure, but that's a good thing to do, to look and do an overlay, and so we can see the likelihood of failure, and then overlay that with this to see if you see that that's the area that we have a prominent area of where we need to do something. I would think that we already are, because when we worked with Hazen, we were able to identify those areas and include those are those additional, I believe, 4 projects that were added in there, because when they actually did an assessment of the system and they identified those additional areas, they got added.
Added vis-a-vis the Reese report? Added beyond what was in the Reese report? Or are we talking the consent order now?
I'm talking consent. I'm talking the consent order.
Okay, so you think that some of the, yeah, Charlie.
I'm just noting that the big leaks were earlier in the year, and they appear to be on the main line that's being replaced. Other than the one, I guess there's one at the hole in the bottom of the pipe, Cordova and 15th, which I assume is part of the main trunk line.
No, it's not.
It's not?
Nope.
So we have
main trunk line's over on 10th. This was on 15th and Cordova.
So we have more issues down in that Cordova area in terms of older
God, I
pipes.
hope not. God, I hope not. Could you
But
make
some
the
of,
map?
some of these don't look too consequential, where you've got a 3/4 inch cork torn off or 2-inch PVC riser. So that's good. We don't have the monsters now anymore.
Yeah, but we have, it's when a 16-inch blows by the Hemishi Canal, it's a lot of, oh no, that's the size. Was a 16-inch. Holds. That's a problem. That's a
Look
problem.
at the 80 million gallon volume one at the top. That's the big.
That's the big one. That's the Bayview one. Yeah, that was the mother. Okay. All right. Again, very good information. I think we're honing. The more data we get, and the more relationships we make between the data and the conditions, and the CIP and the consent order, the better picture we get of the, as David Oshansky used to say, the 20,000-foot view. Not the problems with any particular one, but what are the relationships and how does it?
You're trying to draw the correlation between all of these different components so that you can see how they fit together.
Correct. Okay, wonderful data, wonderful maps. Thank you very much. Very good. Let's keep focusing on these. And does that take us to the end of the presentation on the I&I Water and Sewer Breaks report? We're on to item number 7 now.
We've already done the redundant force main. The only thing left is the capacity flow for new development. Omar, is Igor on to provide any additional information?
Yeah, he's on. Igor?
Look, I don't have any additional information to provide. So if you have any questions, please, I'll be happy to answer them.
I don't have any additional questions at this moment about the capacity letters. Peter, do you? Peter, muting.
I'm just hoping, Igor, that you're giving some thought to this condition issue. There's no answer to this at this point, but we're relying on staff to come up with ideas. You can see there is a general concern that the question of condition is not being taken account of in the adequacy analysis. So I'm hoping that, in odd moments, you're giving some thought to that as well.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And like I mentioned earlier, I think we do look at the condition. We not necessarily put it on the capacity letter, but we generally do look at the condition. And as you probably know, there's a lot of projects are going on to take care of some shortcomings in the sewer lines condition and pump stations like E21 and multiple others.
And I'd also like you to consider, when you give copies of these letters that go to the commission, etc., that you provide that spreadsheet that you provided us with, where you're keeping tabulation of all the various flows that are being permitted and what stage the developments are at. I think that was a very useful spreadsheet.
I think, yes, we do use it all the time. We need to, because we need to track the remaining flows, and we need to track what, whether or not the flows for a particular pump station area are exceeded or not. So it's one of our main tools.
But what I'm saying is that I have never seen that until you showed it to us last month or whenever. Then it's never gone as a matter of routine to the City Commission as part of the approval package for developments, etc. And I think it would be a good idea to, it just shows people that the city is keeping track of all these flows and how they're impacting the city.
Igor?
We can definitely provide it if needed, absolutely.
Igor, when you say that you do consider the condition as part of your review, and I get the sense that it's a kind of a seat of the pants kind of a view of your general information and knowledge about the system and what projects are being done. but not necessarily a rigorous review based upon, let's say, for instance, the risk analysis provided by Hazen. I remember having a conversation with Raj a couple of months before the old infrastructure committee stopped, and he said that he was thinking of ways to try and, excuse me, more rigorously assess the condition of the pump stations and the force mains to the development process. He was going to try and think of a way to make that more of a rigorous review. Has anything happened in that respect?
Well, we do look at the conditions. Like I said, we not necessarily put it on the capacity letter.
Well, when you say that, you say you look at the condition. What exactly are you looking at, Igor? And I'm trying to be helpful here. I really am.
First of all, we look at the condition of the pump station we're working with, for the sewer. That would be one good example. And for example, I'm going to pull out one letter right now and see if can illustrate it with, like the one, for example, recently, oh, that'd be a good one. The recently issued capacity letter for Claridge Oakland Park. There's a 101 unit residential building and 4,000 square foot retail. And what currently there is a construction of the redundant force main going on. So in this particular case, we do put in the letter that, let me find it, the exact words. Okay. For example, the pump station, right? Okay, for example, the development is currently served by pump station B1, which is located north of the proposed development at the intersection of Northeast 37th Street and Bayview Drive. After the redundant force main project is completed and pump station PSB2 is connected to a new force main, pump station PSB1 will have sufficient capacity to serve the proposed development. The approximate timeline for completion is July of 2021. So sometimes it's on a case-by-case basis, but sometimes we do put a condition on our capacity letters.
Okay, this is very good information, but if you were part of this presentation previously, we showed on the water supply side that there is a significant problem with the condition and breakage of pipes along a certain stretch on the beach. And if there was a project going in there, would you have the information that that line is in fact under stress and there is no CIP project on the books to deal with that at this time, and put that in your letter?
Well, it's on a case-by-case basis. We can put it on the letter, but
Igor, I'm really not trying to put you on the spot here and try and make policy decisions that are not ours to make. I'm just trying to understand for myself and my fellow committee members that what more should we be recommending? What additional things should we be recommending so that we can deal with this issue of not approving development prior to the time when the infrastructure is ready to accommodate it without going to a full-blown moratorium? If you see, you get what I'm trying to say. Is there a way that we could incorporate into the current process adequate analysis of the condition of the infrastructure and the time when the project will be completed that will address any deficiencies, tie it to the development process? You don't answer me right now. Think about it, okay?
Or are we already doing that?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping that, and I want Igor to think about it too.
On case by case basis, it depends on how large the project is, what percentage increase on total flow there's going to be as a result of that project. We look at all the factors, and if it's a big project, if line is in really bad shape, we may consider, doing some replacement. But we try not to put it on the developer because maintaining infrastructure is basically, it's our job and not the developers.
Agreed. But then that project has to be in the CIP, funded and ready to be come online when that project comes online. Just part of this conversation that you're putting out ideas. Okay, Peter, one last one on this one, perhaps?
I've been thinking for some time that these adequacy letters should be more standardized so that every time you see them for each development, they're pretty much in exactly the same format. It's almost, and you just plug in numbers. And if there is a sentence or a paragraph standard in there every time that talks about condition, then it's going to explicitly require, that the staff at least talk about that. Now, I'm also conscious that the staff has been working under, extraordinary circumstances. They've also been short-handed, and I just see that Victor's on our meeting, and Victor, I think, at least brings the upper management staff in public works up to strength. So, that's the sort of thing I'd like to see, where we see almost the same thing every time, and there are certain things that have to be mentioned and explicitly addressed, and the spreadsheet travels with the letter as well.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any comments about this last piece that we talked about, the capacity flow for letters for new development?
This is Charlie. I would just have one. We do these all the time. We may not have huge projects in my company, but we have a lot of them. And I would tell you that our civil engineer works very closely with staff. Staff is very, very, very sensitive for the last year to make sure that they are not assuring capacity or creating issues, because I don't think they want to get their neck chopped off. So I do think that this is being given tremendous attention for the last year, and I think they're doing their best efforts to make sure that the proper steps are taken to make sure we're not overstepping.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear that there's been a sort of a heightened awareness on the
the civil engineers on the projects. Flynn does a lot of work here in town.
Yeah.
Work very, very closely with staff to assess storm, water, and sewer. So
that's good to hear, and I would say that it's good that the staff themselves and management as well has been paying more attention to this issue. That may not have been the case in the past, but things change and everybody learns and we move forward. But
I think one thing that kind of gets lost in this, because it's easy to characterize development as bad and rapacious and those type of things. But so millions and millions of dollars of infrastructure in Fort Lauderdale has been put in place in the last 10 years through new development. If you go to Flagler Village, for instance, there wasn't anything there. There weren't any sidewalks. There weren't any curbs. There was no storm drainage. And that's all been done a little piece at a time to where that's a pretty modern neighborhood now. And that a lot of our improvements in the city have been done through the private redevelopment where infrastructure has been rebuilt. I know, God knows how much streetscape I've done up and down Federal Highway and throughout East Fort Lauderdale. So it's not all bad. New development's not all bad.
Nope, I agree. Okay, very good. All right, moving along, guys and gals. It's 4:27. That completes the agenda, and just want to make 100% sure, Pauline, that there's nobody waiting to speak in public.
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. Well, that being said, unless anybody has any, oh, yep, Ralph, you want to say some more words?
Yes, in reference to the early part of the the outline that I had constructed back in 2017, it was pretty much a project plan management plan for the infrastructure task force. This is what it kind of looked like for Anisha. It had a little bar graph type there, if you can, I don't know how well you can see that.
Yeah.
And then it had the breakdown of that. The outline that I referenced to was developed in August 17th, 2017. And it was short and sweet to just to identify the various topics. This is the kind of format. I don't know if Anisha can resurrect that outline and also what I kind of a bar graph thing, if that's going to be helpful to us in regarding to the projects, etc. On that. So I just gave you the dates on that. The bar graph is, well, it had the date of April the 2nd, 2018. So each timeline was followed, and you can see that it was projected so that you could even show the future anticipated work. Let me go on this side here. I know it's, but if that can be resurrected, it's I've had problems with my computer recently, but I'll try to see if I can find it and send it to you. I'll do it through Pauline, so we don't have any problem, even though this is public record already. I know Paul Berg liked the bar, but then again, he's not here anymore, so maybe there's caution to be exercised.
Okay, thank you very much, Ralph. I appreciate that. Okay, so if there is no more items to be discussed that are on the agenda and no more additional items anyone wants to speak on, shall we adjourn this meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, well then the chairperson is adjourning the meeting, and I will see you again in 1 month, hopefully with some additional information. Okay, thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Meredith.
Bye-bye.